Okay, Yorick, here we are at our first ever Anker Solix install. So we're gonna, you helped install this one, right?
I did, yeah.
And we're gonna just give a review of what we think about it, the pros and the cons of it. And at the end, we're gonna give our opinion of whether we would recommend this to our customers. And we've actually kind of got a slightly different opinion on it.
We do, don't we, Mark? So.
Yes. Okay, let's go. Okay, yours. I reckon the first thing that we need to cover is that the company. Who the heck is Anker Solix anyway? So how long have they been around for?
They've been around since 2011, so quite some time now.
Yeah, so not a new company, more newer to Australia since 2021 or something like that.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the products that they have been selling in that 15 years or whatever it's been. So UFI cameras?
UFI, yeah, so personal security cameras for households, that's a massive seller in Australia. My neighbours have UFI cameras at their house.
Yeah, I've got Arlo, but I was tossing up between Arlo and UFI. I think the two big sort of customer-friendly security cameras.
I think they're best known for their third-party like phone chargers, laptop accessories. I actually bought you an Anker laptop adapter for your MacBook.
It didn't occur to me until we started reviewing this product that's what it was, and a really solid, nice product that is too, right? Yeah. So yeah, they're actually the biggest manufacturer or supplier in the world of third-party phone chargers and phone cables and phone adapters and all that kind of thing, right?
They also do a lot of, say, portable camping batteries, really rugged, portable batteries you can use when you're camping, you throw in the back of your car.
Yeah, well, on that point though, check out some reviews online. That people have raving reviews about these products. They love it. You can chuck in the back of the ute, it's tough as, it doesn't break, it keeps on working. Yeah. So they're pretty well known already for tough, rugged batteries, right?
That's correct. And the other thing, which I think you're quite fond of, is 3D printing.
Yes, I've got a 3D printer at home. I didn't realize Anker did those as well, so it's pretty interesting. They've got a really broad range and a really, I guess, an established company.
Oh, they're a well-established brand.
Already, and a well-regarded brand, I think, for their quality products, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. Now, look, I think it's fair to say that the Anker Solix is fairly new to Australia. It's been sold internationally now for a couple of years, but we've only just got them in this year. So this is the Anker Solix X1. This is a hybrid inverter, a single-phase hybrid inverter with a battery stack, but they also come as an AC-coupled option too. Yeah,
okay. So, as we were saying before, you helped install this. From that installer point of view, what did you think about it? Well, obviously it wasn't just you, right?
No. So Alan, who is actually a qualified Sparky, he did the installation. I just put my apprentice shirt on and helped out for emotional support. But look, there's a few things that stood out to me. It's a very straightforward battery to install. I think where it really shines is, look, it goes together quite quickly. The user manual was very intuitive. Now, I had a couple of comments, just simple things. The newer models are going to have adjustable bases on them, so you can adjust just to make sure if you don't have a perfectly level ground. So I had to pour a concrete slab for this battery and get it really level. One of the other things that I did point out to Anker and gave him some feedback on is there's basically wall brackets that stop the battery from tipping forward. These don't actually take any weight, but there's a fair bit of give in them just for installation, but they give you a plastic shim, but it's only the one shim. And so one shim is not really quite enough, especially when you've got a tall 20 kilowatt hour battery stack like this. You could even wiggle it and it was still rattling. So I ended up going to Bunnings and buying a whole bunch of plastic wedges and wedged it all the way down. Probably overkill, but I would have at least liked 2 wedges, yes. Ideally one for each battery module.
So nitpicking issues too, like just an installer problem, right? And you were saying the template wasn't perfectly lined up. It didn't perfectly line up. That's just an installer issue for an installer to look out for, right?
Yeah. But other than that, it was a very, very straightforward install. And look, I think one thing that really stands out on this battery is it's a very nice looking battery system. Aesthetically, they've got this right.
Yeah. C5 marine rating on the product itself, right? So really quality build that can be installed quite close to the beach. Yep. Tell us about that though.
So you can, within 50 meters of the coastline, as long as it's indoors or in a sheltered location, up to 300 meters if it's outdoors like this. Now, we're nowhere near the coast here, but that just sort of hints to the quality of the enclosure. It's all aluminium and powder coated. I think other thing that I really like about this is the screen. This is quite a unique thing today. I mean, almost every inverter used to have a screen on it. These days, it's all through Wi-Fi connectivity, through a phone app. It's a nice glass finish on it. We can see what the solar's produced, what the battery charge percentage is. We're at the end of the day now, and we can also see exactly what the house is using. This is I think, quite a unique feature to
Well,
me.
it's customer friendly. The first thing the customer said when I walked in here today was he loves the battery. He loves particularly the screen about it. We'll talk about that special customer later. But yeah, that is just a really nice user-friendly thing for customers that don't like looking at their app all the time.
Yeah.
Hey, talking about the build, it's all marine grade, but plastic covers. Don't we have issues with plastic covers?
Look, it depends on the plastic cover. I think this is a little bit better, a bit more fit for purpose. It's just there's no big gaps in it. But I think, we've said enough about plastic covers in the past.
I don't mind this plastic cover. It's not about plastic, but yes. Okay. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the inverter. So what I've done over the last 5 and 10 years or whatever is buy inverters and bring them in and do a comparison test. And I normally compare them against the best inverters on the market, SMA and Fronius.
Yeah.
And not a lot of inverters line up to them. In the old days, like 10 years ago or something like that, a cheap inverter would be called a boat anchor. I don't think we don't have boat anchors. This anchor is not a boat anchor, I don't think. We don't really get these really trash inverters anymore. So inverters, you either get good, totally adequate inverters, or you get really good inverters like Fronius, SMA. I'd almost put Huawei up there with that as well, actually. I don't know that this is going to be... If I side-by-side tested it, as I do a lot of other inverters, I didn't take the time to sit this full thing up in the office before we brought it out here, but if I side-by-side tested it, I think Fronius is going to outdo it. I don't know whether this is a global maximum power point tracker, or in other words, is it got sort of four-wheel drive to get it out of the shady position where there's shade on your panels?
And this house does get a little bit of shade, especially in winter months. But
they say it does have a global maximum power point tracker. People tell me that, or companies tell me that, and that it's not always true. But let's say it does. I believe it.
Yeah. So far, this system has been working quite well.
Yeah, been working quite well. Is it going to last? I don't have any huge concerns about an inverter not lasting. I think it may not work as well as a Fronius inverter, but we're talking about premiums.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing, talking about the battery, Oz. Tell me what you think about the battery itself.
Well, let me just take you through what we've got here. So we've got a 6 kilowatt single phase hybrid inverter. As I mentioned, they also do AC coupled options as well. And this is a 20 kilowatt hour battery stack. So these are all 5 kilowatt hour modules. What kind of battery features we were talking about? So this is a little bit similar to, say, how Sungrow does backup. So it does have the EPS backup function. We've actually got the internal islanding contactors. So all the backup circuits, or your central circuits, actually pass through the inverter permanently.
Yeah. And so your contactor is built into it, which is a unique... Let's turn it off, eh?
Yeah, let's cut the power and then go into backup mode.
So lights white at the moment, and this is what happens.
Yeah, so
Yorick did this before as I was looking at the lights inside, and they don't even flicker. In fact, we've got a light on back there that it didn't even flicker. But it just changes blue, so it's off-grid.
Yeah.
There's a downside to this, though, compared to your Tesla app, right?
Yeah, that's true. So one thing we did notice is that it doesn't actually send you a push notification. So even though you don't see it change over, look, I think at least getting a notification saying, hey, you're at a blackout, maybe be conservative with your power, would be a really good idea.
Yeah. We couldn't find how to get the push notifications working. Hopefully they fix that. I think that's a big one, because you want to know that you need to be a bit more conservative on power.
Yeah.
So we'll tag a comment down below if and when they fix that. I would say when they fix that.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so the battery architecture is something, and this is probably my biggest grief about this. This is an opinion, so I'll say my piece. So it came out of the Huawei inverter, which is a very similar architecture, and SIG Energy came out of Huawei as well. So all three are using this kind of new way of doing batteries. So let's say Sungrow and Fronius, for example, they've got modular batteries, but you stack these bricks together, whatever size they might be, and the voltage increases, so you end up with a true high voltage battery. So running through that battery then is relatively high voltage, let's say 400 volts, and maybe 50 amps or something like that.
Yeah.
These batteries are doing it differently, and they're having optimizers in. So they've got a high current, maybe 100 amp, and lower voltage, maybe 50 volt battery, around about that, in each battery. And then over here, we have a DC to DC converter. So it needs to step that voltage up to a bus voltage of 400 volts, I believe.
Yeah. And they call it an optimizer.
They call it an optimizer. Why the heck would they call it an optimizer? So that kind of sounds a little bit funny. I've had I hate optimizers now. I went through and we installed a lot of SolarEdge. SolarEdge are the guys that coined optimizers for DC to DC converters. their optimizers are a disaster. They fail all over the place. Tygo, I started backing Tygo for a while.
I put Tiger on my dad's system.
Yeah, we've had a lot of failures with them, and they're
Yeah.
black boxes half the time anyway. They don't do anything. I don't know why you'd call it an optimizer, but it does come to probably my overarching point is that why put extra components in there like SolarEdge and Tygo did when they're just a failure point? This product also, to press that point a little bit harder, it's doing a lot of hard work. Let's say a Fronius or SunGrow battery, they sit around about, depending on the configuration, they sit around about 95% efficiency, right?
Yeah.
This sits around about 90.5. So where are we losing that efficiency? Well, we're not losing it on paper from the inverter because it's about the same efficiency as every inverter, really up close to 100%. We're not losing in the batteries, I don't believe. If we are losing in the batteries, that's even a bigger concern. Heating up batteries, losing efficiency.
But I don't think we are, because one thing I noticed, as soon as we turn this battery system on, this whole right side of that stack actually gets quite hot to the touch. So anything that's heating up, especially electrically, that's wasted energy.
That's where the efficiency loss is. So it's not really just theory. We're feeling this and going, well, okay, that's where the efficiency is going. Efficiency losses, maybe you're thinking, I don't care, this battery is a lot more affordable than Fronius and BYD.
Yeah, or
SunGrow.
Tesla, yeah.
So efficiency losses maybe not the end of the world, but when you've got all that heat, then you've just got a product that is more likely to fail.
I agree. I think simplicity is key to longevity, the less components. But I will give you a counter argument. The way that this is configured allows for a huge amount of flexibility with how you design or configure and install the battery. And it also gives you sort of redundancy in the design as well. So, look, I might sound like a SolarEdge salesman here, but look, basically we've got a 20 kilowatt hour stack. Let's say this particular module here suddenly stops working. Well, instead of losing that whole system, you'd still have 15 kilowatt hours of battery operational. The other thing too is, what if I wanted to expand later down the track? Well, let's say it's been on the house for 5 years. We've lost a few percent in efficiency, in storage capacity, which would be expected. Well, I can add additional modules beside it, and they've got brand new warranties. They're completely independent of the old system.
Okay, Yorick, you are sounding a bit like a SolarEdge salesman. I've got a counter argument to your counter argument. So, I think that's overhyped. We are not expanding batteries anymore. With the solar battery rebate, it's go big or go home, right? You only get one bite of the cherry, so we put in big systems. Last year, we would have put a small, some customers would have put a small 12 kilowatt hour, BYD system in, and then asked for another 3 modules when they saw how their monitoring went.
I agree.
It's not the case anymore. Go big or go home, install a big system. If the module fails, we've got a 10-year warranty, mate. That's Anker's problem. So
yeah. Well, look, there is one other thing I do like about the configurability of the system is that unlike, say, SunGrow, BYD, SIG Energy, which use these floating point connectors where you actually have to have them all stacked together, these actually use MC4 connectors and just comms cable or
plugs, basically.
Yeah, basically just plugs. So what we can do is we can have different size stacks. We can have I could have the inverter here and then the batteries a little bit further down the wall. The other thing I can do too is if I wanted to have everything up off the ground, I could wall mount every battery sort of side by side and not have to worry too much about having it really close to the switchboard. So
you'd love to install that, wouldn't you? What a nightmare. But I think I think maybe potentially in this case here, the best positive about that is the design flexibility. You can make artwork with these batteries on the wall if you want to.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, again, I don't know if it's a real world bonus, but,
yeah,
it is a difference between it.
It's hugely configurable.
Okay, so we've gone through the battery. Let's talk about the app.
Yeah. So I think this is, a huge plus for Anker. So they've obviously got a technology background. They got the app right in a lot of ways. It's heavily inspired by Tesla.
In a good way.
Yeah, which is a good thing. Now, it does some things I think a bit better. I think it's brighter, it's easier to read what's going on. Tesla is quite a dark interface, so sometimes it's a bit hard to see if your eyes aren't as good. But Anker, everything's sort of bright and colourful, and you can see where the power's going, and it'll highlight what's gone to the battery, what's gone to the grid, what's gone to the house. I like that. It uses a very similar sort of methodology for selecting time of use configurations, but it is obviously not as complex as, say, Tesla. But they are the best on the market.
So let's talk about that then. That time of use thing is actually a big deal because for example, this system here is a 20 kilowatt hour battery. The customer probably doesn't have 20 kilowatt hours of solar surplus on an average day, right?
Not in winter.
But the fact that we've oversized the battery, what it means is that at lunchtime, for example, we can set the tariff on this system so that the battery will know to charge up off the grid because power is really cheap or even free in some cases, because that's what time of use tariffs are sort of doing for us at the moment.
Correct.
So we can charge up this battery not just from surplus solar, but from free power from the grid, and then run it all through the night. So,
That's correct.
Pretty nice way of doing it. Tesla trumps that, don't they? They go one step further.
So one thing I found with my Tesla app, and look, this is what I have at home, so this is the model, what I'm most familiar with, but it'll actually take into account not only what I'm using and the power prices that I've set, it'll optimize essentially based on what my usage habits are and also what the weather's going to do. So if I'm on a really cheap rate, say over midnight on an EV plan, it will decide that it will reserve a certain portion of battery power to get me through that morning period. Now, if it's a rainy day, I notice it reserves more power.
Yeah.
But if I change my usage habits and start using more power early in the morning because it's colder winter, it reserves more again. Whereas with this system, and look, this is not the end of the world, but if I set it to peak, it'll use the battery power. If I set it to off-peak, it'll reserve the battery power and just sort of use the grid and hold that battery state of charge. And then if I set it to super off-peak, which is what the free period is, it just pulls it in from the grid. It's not as sophisticated when it comes to some of that AI.
We're talking to a premium batteries. Yeah,
That's exactly it.
Fronius, if you're a nerd, Fronius goes a little bit over top as well with that kind of thing, not with weather data, but completely adequate for
completely adequate. Yeah.
what we're talking about.
The other thing that is a little bit lacking in some of the installer platforms are like remote analysis data. So one of the things we really like about the Fronius system is we can bring up voltages, currents coming from the array.
Yep.
Tesla actually was lacking this feature as well, which made it difficult for us to diagnose if there was an issue with the solar system. And we're hoping that they will bring this in soon. We've been told that there's an update in the works.
Yeah, that is a big one. Doesn't sound like a big one for the customer, but when you call us up, our tech support guys, and go, I've got something wrong with my solar system, if we can just jump in there and look at what's may or may not be going wrong with it straight away by looking at those voltages and currents, it just makes after-sales support so much better. So I think Anker, they kind of said that they thought they had that. We couldn't find it even with a firmware update. So again, I'll put comments down below if they've got that voltage and current for all the nerds listening here.
But the one thing that Anker does really well, it's all the touch points. It's premium finishes, glass screen. The app is really user-friendly from a customer standpoint. They've got that down pat.
You know what? I don't think we mentioned. It's 150 mil wide, right?
Yes,
so not much, doesn't stick out much further than your downpipe. It's really slimline if you need to fit that into a garage and you don't want to bang your car door on it.
Well,
and
they're quite energy dense. I mean, even if we compare it to say a Tesla Powerwall, which is only 13 kilowatt hours, a Tesla would come up to about here. It's about the same width, same depth, but
20 kilowatt hours. Yeah.
This is 20 kilowatt hours. So it's a lot more modular.
Yeah, exactly. Now, let's talk about warranties.
Warranties are interesting. So the industry standard's a 10-year warranty. Now, Anker has the same industry standard warranty, which is a 10 years on the inverter, 10 years on the batteries with a throughput warranty. So 14 megawatt hours worth of throughput. Now, that warranty does include things like the LED lights and the screen. The other thing that was I like the Anker warranties. They're very easy to read. So one thing they also mentioned is regardless of how much you thrash the battery and cycle it, even if you exceed that throughput warranty, the DC to DC optimizers still have a 10-year warranty regardless.
Yeah. That gives me comfort too. Like I've just had a crack at the optimizer, which is the reason why I think it's important that I pointed out the background of Anker. I kind of have some confidence that they're going to be around should we have to claim a warranty on an optimizer or whatever it might be, LED lights or something.
Yeah.
LED lights, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
It is.
You've got so a company can offer a 10-year warranty on an LED light and a contactor.
Yeah, it has been done.
Yeah.
Anker's proof.
Interesting. Other companies don't. But anyway, move on from that.
Move on to that. So in Australia, 70% of its original capacity after 10 years. And basically with the throughput warranty, you can fully cycle this battery once a day for about 8 years. Most people don't fully cycle their battery to completely zero to completely full every single day. So you should realistically get that full 10-year warranty, even if you use the battery pretty heavily.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, nice. Okay, Yoz, on to the last part is, would you recommend it? And I'll ask it this way. Would you install this for your mother?
Maybe not for my mother, but definitely my mother-in-law.
Yes, you did. Okay.
So actually, I I actually paid for half of this battery, so I put this in for my mother-in-law. It helped them out with it, and I don't regret it. I think it's actually a really good fit-for-purpose battery for her application.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, another question though, are we going to keep on installing? And that's a question for me, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the short answer to this is no, we're not going to keep on installing it. And we talked about the MPPT trackers on it. I've got no problem with the battery and how it's going to last. It's got some design flexibility issues, but particularly for us that are using this Canadian panel that has got quite a high voltage, low current panel, and it would really restrict us even more. So if I was to install this, then I would have to bring a different model of panel on so that I could marry the two. And that's just logistically awkward in a warehouse when I'm trying to make efficiencies, happen in a warehouse.
And I completely agree. The other comment I would have is I would wait for the 8 or 10 kilowatt single phase hybrid inverter to come out from Anker, which we know is in the works. But I really hope that they have more than the 2 MPPT trackers.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, it's not going to suit every situation, but where it does, in a situation like for your mother-in-law, it is a really nice battery, comfortable enough with a warranty. They're not SunGrow or Fronius, they don't have years of experience doing this, but I kind of think have some faith in the company a little bit.
Well, they definitely came out swinging with the X1. It's a very solid looking battery.
It is. And you know what? I feel like they took inspiration from their camping batteries. It's just this, you could almost throw this thing in the back of the ute and it'd keep on working, So yeah, I really do like this product. Yes, we're going to keep on doing. So we've done this for your mother-in-law. We've got another review coming up soon for my mother-in-law.
Okay.
I'm going to do a similar thing and gift her a battery so that we can review it. And we've got a few others. I'm putting another one into my warehouse and want to keep on doing this so that we can, instead of just looking at a spec sheet or going to a trade show and checking out an inverter, we want to really touch and feel it, because especially you installing this and mucking around with the app because it's for your in-laws, you learn a lot more in that way, don't you? So
as I said, it's as if this was at my house and I've really got to know this system. Yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, thanks, Yoz, for investing all that money and time into reviewing the product.
It was a pleasure. And look, I would do it again. I think this was a really solid solution for this household.
Rightio.
All right.
Catch you next time.
Yeah.